And we are live. Finally, this is. I am back. The electricity went.
Oh no! It was a great start. You said so. Well,
Yes, I think I'll have to edit it. We don't have anybody
no,
watching
that's good.
anyway at
That's
the
good.
moment, so I can edit
Yeah.
that long space out. We are still live, so I'm gonna begin again. That was a full start. Welcome to Leadership Lives. It is Saturday, the 14th of September. I was about to say Viva Mexico, but that is
Yeah.
tomorrow night. That Viva.
People
Viva.
still,
I
people will
think
be watching it
we
tomorrow.
lack the Mexican blood, or I lack the Mexican blood there to give it the oomph that it needs. But that is tomorrow night. But nevertheless, Viva. Uh, and today we are talking about age, a topic that, funnily enough, doesn't really bother me very much. I like getting older, though everything hurts. My ankle hurts this morning, for example. Uh, um, but I generally have a very positive outlook on aging. Oh dear, oh dear. That was my internet this time. That was not the electricity. So anyway, so where were we? I was saying today we're going to talk about the topic of age. We not all of us, unfortunately. Some of us are lucky enough to get older, and today we have with us uh, Dave Huxtable, a coach, a leadership coach, specializing in diversity and ageism. I think counts as a diversity issue.
Yeah, it
Dave, would
does.
you like to introduce yourself, because I know you very well. You're an ex-boss of mine, but I know less about the coaching part of your life. So could you tell us a little bit about that? What is a diversity coach?
Well, I mean, I don't really market myself as a diversity coach. I'm
Hmm.
a leadership coach in general, but of course, diversity is a big part of being a leader because we live in
Mm.
a very diverse world and lots of research. I've got a frog in my throat. Lots of research shows that diverse organizations are more successful than ones where everyone has everything in common. So,
Oh.
um, and it's interesting because it's not just about representation. Representation is important, but
Hmm.
if you have a group of white middle-aged men, the
Yes.
tendency will be that they will agree with each other. And it's not
Right. Yes.
necessarily about their life experience. It's not necessarily about bias. It's just groupthink is more prevalent when everyone is similar to each other. Once you
Okay.
get someone, if there's suddenly a woman or a black person or a member
Hmm.
of the LGBTQI community
Hmm.
on that board or in that group, it frees everyone from having to
Hmm.
be the same. And it frees
And does
people
it?
from group.
Yeah. And does it not create lots of conflict though? And that's what people need to be able to, or some conflict anyway. And that's what people need to be able um, to manage, if you
Yeah,
like.
maybe that's one of the reasons. That's one of the things that breaks the groupthink.
Yes. Okay. So it's seeing conflict in a positive manner, I suppose. Is that is
Hmm.
that is that?
Yeah, because you then do get a diversity of views, and you do get a diversity of lived experience.
Yes, yes, you would. Yeah, yeah. But
But
not all
it's not
cultures.
just not limited to that if you have these five a number of straight white men,
Uh-huh.
and suddenly you have the black gay
Yeah,
woman. They're not just making better decisions about things
yeah.
affecting their gay black clients. They're making better decisions across the board
Mm,
because there's more diversity of thinking, of attitudes, of
fascinating.
um, of just expression.
Hmm. Is it because people are more careful about their thinking? They think things through more than than if they were just on autopilot. Do people go onto autopilot when
I think they do go
when
onto
there's no
autopilot.
diversity in a group?
Yeah, because
Yeah,
people will say things like, "Well, I'm
business
sure
as
you'll
usual.
agree that."
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So there's a language part to it as well.
Yeah.
You and I started our lives as language teachers. Well, we still are language teachers, aren't we? We both
Yeah.
still teach English as a foreign language, as for specific purposes, whatever it may be. And yes, that language is in there as well, isn't it? In the language of diversity. Let's move on to the first question. Do we get less apt the older we get? Because I think I told you about a work colleague of mine many years ago who had a learning difficulty, and he was a bit depressed about this. And I said, well, don't worry, because I mean, there are things you can do about it, to begin with. And secondly, the older we get, the cleverer we get in a way. That's why IQ scores are less impressive, right? The older we get, I don't know. You probably know what the IQ scores are. The IQ score of what is? Would 80 be a good one? 100? What? Help me out here. For an 8-year-old child, not be very impressive for 40-year-old.
I watched a YouTube video about this the other day, and I can't remember what the kind of the top of the bell curve is.
Yeah, it might be 120 is the top. I'm not quite sure.
120 is definitely kind of on the clever side.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I would imagine so. I think Madonna's 120 or something like that. But it is more impressive, isn't it, if an 8-year-old has 120, a score of 120, than a 40-year-old. We do tend to get cleverer if we use IQ scores as the indicator. Obviously, the older we get. And he was very surprised by this. I expected him to be happier about it, actually, but he was very surprised. He said, "Well, that's very funny. I thought that we got less intelligent the older we got, And
Well, he probably didn't believe you because you're some old geezer telling him that.
Yes, that is true. Of course, it is something that an older person would say, isn't it? Though I wasn't very old when I wasn't that old when
All right, this was a while back then.
This was a while back. Yes, exactly. So thus the question, do we get less apt the older we get? And I suppose it is a bit of a trick question because it's not all about IQ, is it? It's about EQ and other things as well.
And I mean, I think, what your point about 8-year-olds, that it's very difficult to remove the cultural bias and the kind of training element from IQ tests. I know that they make a great effort to do so, but
yes,
you can up your score by just practicing the kinds of tasks that you have on the test.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And people who've gone through more education, more learning, would tend to score higher, I imagine. But I think, it depends what you mean by cleverness, which I think is probably something broader than IQ. And as you get older, you have a greater wealth of experience. You have had more time to learn more things. So I think you mentioned, those of us who are lucky enough to get old, those of us who are lucky enough to get old and still retain our health, then I think yes, there is a growth in aptitude as you get older. And I think you've frozen again. You're either in rapt attention or there's something wrong with your signal.
Ah, dear, oh dear.
You went for one. Never mind. I carried on talking.
Yes, good.
For
yes.
a bit. Until I realised I didn't know whether you were in rapt attention and frozen in place or whether it was your internet. But when I stopped talking, then you didn't move either. So
I think things are, because I did my intranet is in tip-top shape, but I think it's a bit wonky. Everything is a bit wonky because of the storm last night, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm back now.
You're back.
So what's the conclusion then? Do we get less apt the older we get? My intuition tells me not. I feel apter than
Yeah, I think I'm
ever,
apter.
most apt I've ever been.
I think it depends, though. I mean, like everything, it depends on the individual. If you keep learning, if you keep adapting, then you do. You can accumulate knowledge of your life. You accumulate experience, and if you have the kind of mindset where you keep learning from that, and are curious about, and he's frozen again, and are curious about new things, then yeah, you keep growing. But I know people who I would classify as having been middle-aged when we were teenagers, and they continue to be, and they're very set in their ways. They refuse to adapt to anything. They refuse to see positivity in change. You get people who say, the music that happened to be out when I was 15 is the best that the world has ever known, and therefore I'm never going to like anything else. And I think that's a limiting mindset, and it holds people back. I think the other thing that limits people, and I don't know if we might come onto that, is this notion that our generation defines us. And I wrote an article about that a while back. Clearly certain things that happen. I mean, I think the COVID generation will be marked by certain things. Will have had experiences that no other generation, well, apart from those who were around in 1918, will have had. And technological advances make things possible and make people's lives different. But I don't think human beings are fundamentally the same, going back for millennia. And so the idea, we use the word millennia. You get people saying, "Oh, millennials, they do this," or "Oh, you're such a boomer." I just carried on talking to myself, and he's back and he's frozen. And
I am back.
Yeah, I just carried on. So I went on to talk about. I was talking about people who resist change, and people who aren't learning, and people who are kind of set in their ways and so that prevents you getting apter as you get older. And then I went into these labels, these generational labels, where people say, "Oh, he's a boomer, so he thinks like this," or "Oh, these millennials, you can't work with them because they," and I reject those. I don't think you can make generalizations about millions of people, and we reject it. If you said something, if you said that about women, or you said that about people of a certain ethnic background, people would call you out on it. But you can say, "Oh, millennials think this," and yet, sure, there are things that have happened in the lives of different generations that shape them to an extent, but they don't define them. What do you think? Are you frozen again? Yes, I'll just carry on. So that they don't define them. And I think a lot of the things that people complain about millennials over are just life stage things. So there are certain things that 20-year-olds do that maybe 60-year-olds don't do, but the 60-year-olds did do when they were 20. And now they're complaining about people doing those things and saying, "Oh, it's because they're millennial." No, it's because they're 20 or 10 or 72 or what. So it's not about which decade you happen to have been born in. and then I run out of things to say. Might be interesting in the comments, for those of you, I don't know if there's anyone watching live, but for those of you who are watching this after the fact, what do you learn? What experiences are you kind of piling onto your, oh yeah, you're back.
I'm back. God Almighty! Sorry, I shouldn't take the Lord's name in vain.
I'm sure he doesn't
mind. No, but I think that's a very good point. That the point that you were making before I was rudely cut off by my internet provider. It is strange, isn't it, categorizing people like that? And it's standard practice in human resources,
Oh,
It is
really?
standard practice in Mexico anyway, and I feel in the United States as well, to talk about, intergenerational, ways of working, as if it was like, a fact that all people who are 23 work this way and all people who are, 45 work that way, And I think it's much more complex than that. It's much more diverse and much more interesting.
Because all these people are individuals.
Yes, exactly. Oh my God, yes. Yeah. I wonder whether there's an attempt there to, remove the individuality and increase the predictability there.
We like labeling people and things, don't we? We like to, humans, we like to try and predict each other's behavior by saying, oh, this is a that kind of person, or this is a this kind of person.
Yes. But it doesn't lead to very good things, I don't think.
No. Well, no, I mean, whenever you label like that, you then start thinking, oh, that was such a typical millennial thing to do.
Yes.
Oh, these generation Zs.
That's right. Maria Luisa and I were talking in the second live, I think, about, the use of the adverb always with intonation to express annoyance. He's always doing that, or he's always, losing this. He probably isn't, actually, It's not a fact. What you're doing there is expressing annoyance. And that's the thing, that maybe a millennial does something once or twice, and then gets kind of, that gets typified,
Yeah, and what I was saying when you were trying to get back on was that a lot of the things that people complain about other generations are just life stage things. So
yes,
there are things that 20-year-olds have in common, but they have that in common with 20-year-olds in the Roman Empire. They have that in common with 20-year-olds 100 years ago. And it's interesting. I actually researched an article about this. That some of the things that people complain about, the Romans were complaining about.
Oh, really? For example?
Even technology. So I think it was Socrates. It was one of those Greek boys that said that writing was a terrible thing for the youth. That reading and writing, terrible thing, because they don't rely on their memory anymore. Kids today, instead of memorizing stuff, they just write it down and then read it, and it's addling their brains writing.
They should have everything up here, I had exactly that discussion or debate yesterday with a group of students. There were a few students in the group who are adamant that ChatGPT is a bad thing because it makes us lazy. And it's like, that's amazing, isn't it? Sorry?
Socrates would have agreed.
Yes, exactly. So does that mean we don't use encyclopedias then, or dictionaries, or manuals, for example, for processes in companies? You just need to have all the process up here in your head, because it's lazy to go to the manual to check what step 6 is in the process.
I love all those photographs. When people say, "Oh, everybody just stares at their phones," and back in the day, we used to talk to each other, and these photographs of like everybody on a tube platform, each with their newspaper.
Right. Yes, exactly. That's right. Yes, of course. These are human behaviors. Yeah. So I suppose the answer is it depends, right? Do we get more apt or less apt the older we get? It probably depends, right?
Yeah, I think if if you have that growth mindset, that developmental mindset, if you keep learning, if you keep questioning, if you're open to new experiences and new knowledge, then you keep kind of just piling it on.
Yes. Yes.
And
I
you
mean,
can
you didn't always
reevaluate you've got this great wealth of experience.
Yeah.
And if you're open to new knowledge and new interpretations, you can reanalyze that.
Oh, sure. Yes. That's right. Grammar, which I'm not a particular fan of teaching, for example, as an English teacher. When I teach Spanish, I teach a lot of grammar. My understanding of English grammar now is much, much deeper than it was when I first started teaching. Even when I was what I knew when I was 30, it's much, much deeper now and know more about it. Yeah, you can definitely go back and deepen your knowledge or get a different perspective on a particular piece of knowledge. Yeah. So going back to the main question, do older older leaders make better leaders? It seems to be we're erring on the it depends, I suppose.
It depends.
In terms of intelligence, anyway. Yeah. What was the second question?
It depends. Does anyone make a better leader? It depends on what kind of leader they are. So if you've been an excellent leader for a long career and you're determined to keep getting better and better at it, then yes.
That's an interesting point. Yes, exactly.
If you've been dreadful for your entire career and
you don't care,
think that's the right way to be, then you're probably worse now than you were when you started.
Yes.
Dreadful.
Very true. You're more stuck in your ways. Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, last night I was thinking after, I kind of, hung up on you or we stopped our conversation on Facebook Messenger. I started thinking, God, I mean, the Queen of Britain, God rest her soul, how old was she when she became leader? She was about 15 or something, wasn't she?
No, I think she was
maybe a little bit older.
Yeah.
How old was she? 30, did you say?
No, I think she was in her 20s.
Yeah, she was. She was pretty young, wasn't she? And then Joan of Arc, apparently, she was 12, wasn't she, when she led?
Great female leaders of art.
Yeah, 12-year-old leader there. And then if you believe Napoleon Bonaparte's autobiography, because I don't think there are any other biographies really written around the time that he lived, besides his, obviously, he was amazing at the age of 8. He was already, he taught himself French. He did all sorts of things, when he was incredibly young. So, we do tend to write off. Oh, yeah.
If you're going into people who write their own biographies.
Brilliant. Should we edit that?
He invented all kinds of stuff when he was like 2 and that.
Well, I suppose the thing about these leaders that I've just mentioned is that they were, well, except for Napoleon, I think.
I think he was
Joan of Arc.
He was a bit of a megalomaniac, wasn't he? And I think he was probably a bit.
He was, but super determined, because he arrived in France. We saw this in one of the other lives with Patti Guadarrama. He arrived in France not speaking French. He taught himself French because I imagine the teaching of French as a foreign language, FLE, I think as it's called by the French, was probably not very developed in the 18th century. 18th century? Yes, 18th century it was, wasn't it? He is certainly determined, but the others were appointed, weren't they? Joan of Arc was appointed by God. The Queen of England or the world or whatever it was, God rest her soul. She was appointed.
She inherited it. It was a hereditary title.
Yes, hereditary, but an important one, and appointed by God as well. Actually, ultimately, there's a bit of a pattern here. And who was the other one that I mentioned? You mentioned
Napoleon.
Yes, but he wasn't appointed by God, isn't he?
He wasn't appointed by anyone. I mean, it was a coup, really, wasn't it? He rose up through the ranks and took power, I think.
Yeah.
And I think
maybe he was an outlier.
He crowned himself.
He did crown himself.
He grabbed the crown off the Pope.
Exactly. Yes, proper order, proper order.
So
But
not great on the humility stakes, one imagines.
so younger leaders tend to be appointed, don't they? Or is that a gross
No, I think
generalization?
you're going down a rabbit hole there.
Yes. Um, so what else about being a younger leader? Does it depend on the industry? For example, if you begin a startup, if you start a startup, if you start up a startup, such as Facebook. I mean, maybe it is an advantage to be a younger leader there, because you got the energy to plug away for hours programming, and I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe an older
actually, I
leader
mean,
would not be.
having said you were going down a rabbit hole with your appointing and not, maybe you weren't. So
The idea of the protege.
well, I mean, so someone like Zuckerberg was self-appointed in a sense,
Napoleon, yeah.
and so maybe, and that speaks to some of the biases and possible prejudices that
In what
if
sense?
you are, and I don't think it has to be tech. I don't.
Okay.
Trying to think of startups through history.
Yeah, because startups today tend to be
About
tech,
tech,
don't they?
but that idea of something that's really groundbreaking, something that's really, really innovative, and someone has an idea and they build a business out of it. They then, they're the owner, they're the inventor, they're the innovator, and they appoint themselves as the leader.
Yes.
Sometimes what happens then, because I was thinking about startups, sometimes what happens then when it gets to a certain stage and it's going to go public and all those things, and it's got a board of directors, that board might say, hang on, young whippersnapper, yeah, you've built it to this stage and you've done amazing things. Are you ready to be the CEO of a billion-dollar company?
Probably not. Yes.
You were brilliant at being the innovator of a startup in a garage for my American friends, but you maybe don't have the experience and the skills and the credibility to be the CEO of a billion-dollar company. So we'll get some old guy in, and they tend to be old and they tend to be guys.
And yes, and what's going on there? Yes. And that person is kind of like an advisor or something in a way, I mean, you still have the,
Well,
or sometimes not.
I was thinking about CEOs. They're figureheads, aren't
they? Do you think so? Do you think that they really don't do anything?
Oh no, they do things. They do a lot. They do bring that experience, and they are very good at creating vision and communicating it and bringing people along with it. And they are good at raising money. But part of the role is a figurehead. Part of the role is to create confidence. So that investors are happy.
Yes.
And so that more people invest. And I was thinking it's a bit like film stars. So do you have Timothée Chalamet in your movie because he's a brilliant actor? Yes, and because there are lots of brilliant actors.
Yes.
And if he gets paid 100 times more than someone else, an unknown, who is possibly just as good an actor, who's definitely not 100 times less of a good actor than Tim. But the reason that you're paying Timothée Chalamet big bucks to be in your movie is that he's going to pull in the crowds.
Yes,
it's a big name. So in the same way, I think CEOs are stars.
Yeah.
They bring the reputation, they bring the name, they bring the gravitas.
Yeah. and a particular culture. I think that's the thing, isn't
And
it?
a particular culture.
That's
Yeah,
the most
but that's them
important.
being good at their jobs. That's like the
Okay.
actor you've never heard of being brilliant.
Okay, that's right. Yes, because it's
The
not that
the
easy to
element
instill.
the element that you're paying them the big bucks for is
Mhm.
the star quality and the name
Mm.
recognition.
And the cult of the leader. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of that in it, isn't there, as well? Yeah, yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing how shallow we are as human beings. In a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
We are kind of so simplistic in that sense, you know. Do you think that people employ CEOs? Do companies employ CEOs? There's a lot of rotation, obviously. Is that even a word in English? Turnover. There's a lot of turnover of
Sure.
CEOs. Churn. Yeah, they don't last very long, right? They generally get about 3 months to do something, and then they're gone because they're very expensive, and they can do an awful lot of damage. I suppose they can maybe instill the wrong culture in a company or something. There's lots of things that a CEO can
Well, I mean,
do.
I think often they get fired for things that were beyond their control.
Well,
Uh,
yes, exactly. I think that often happens as well. Yeah, but my question is, do you think that people hire bad CEOs? I think you and I can think of some examples, possibly, or maybe not. People who are not great, uh, based on their track record, and then they're there and they do lots of damage. I'm sure I can think of somebody like that. Yeah, or not. Do you think that the
well, I suppose, yeah, sometimes the star quality, because we were saying that the star quality and the reputation
mm,
is the thing. So yeah, I mean,
mhm,
I'm definitely aware of organizations which tolerate bad leadership
mm,
because the person gets results, or
right.
the person is so brilliant in
Mm,
one side of their job that the
mm,
fact that they lose it and scream at people and throw things
yeah.
um, is overlooked because they do bring in the box.
Wow, that still goes on. Yes, yes, of course. Yes, I see that as well. Actually, in my work with companies, sometimes, sometimes, not
Mm.
very often. Uh,
It also makes me think about those positions where the myth is that you're the great guiding light
mhm.
and that your experience and your reputation is going to create value for the shareholders. That's why they get fired, because you need to blame someone. And it
Yeah.
makes me think, I mean, as you know, I'm a tremendous sports fan and I particularly love football. Not.
Yes, I was. Hang on, have we got the right guest?
But I have
Yeah.
started watching Welcome to Wrexham recently. But anyway, football managers
Uh-huh. Yes.
get fired for things that are beyond their control. It seems
Yes.
to me. I think didn't England come second in something? Was it the European Cup?
It might have been. Yes,
Yeah,
we can
I think
gloss
I think
over
they
that because
very
I'm the
very
wrong person
nearly
to
won. I think they
ask.
kind of got to the semi-finals and then they lost. And had they won, the
Yeah.
manager would have been showered with accolades.
Isn't that amazing that that's
But
still
because
happening
they
in the
lost, they
21st
fired
century?
him. And rather than
Just for
saying,
coming second.
wow, getting to the semi-finals for the first time in
Yeah.
decades for the men's team um, was an amazing achievement. No, you're the great
Mm.
figurehead. You're the person we pay big money to. You
Hmm.
lost, so we
Yes.
fire.
And that's part of, I don't know if you've heard of Simon Sinek, and he, at the business consultant, and he has a book called Leaders Eat Last. And I think that's the thing. I asked, I can't remember, live number 6, I think it was, with Anna Reyes. I asked her the question, who looks after the Dalai Lama? It's like sometimes that's what it feels like being a leader. I'm sure you've had those moments as a director where you felt, everybody gets kind of, looked after, as it were, in the emotional sense. And
Mm.
you know, and you take responsibility for absolutely everything, and nobody really notices. But that, and so, you know, who looks after the Dalai Lama? You know, the answer is nobody. You know, he looks after himself. And of course, that is the way it should be, isn't it? I mean, we should, as leaders, be immune almost to looking for approval from others, and have our own systems in place
Mhm.
for looking after our self-esteem and building our self-esteem. But it is that way. It's quite tough at the top, I think, to pull out another you know, cliche. It's tough at
Yeah,
the
because
top.
that's
Leaders eat
the
last.
head that
Who
wears
looks
the
after
crown.
the Dalai Lama? Nobody. You know, so you get fired for coming second. No.
Mm-hmm. There was something else going back
Yeah.
to age. There's a kind of and that kind of the popular beliefs about age.
Mm,
So we talked about, you know, those labeling of the generational labels.
mm,
Um, and I think there is a popular belief, and your friend who was surprised that when you said that people got apter as they got older, there is a popular
yeah.
belief in Western culture that that favors youth, that values youth, and you know, there are myths around older people being you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
But we
Oh,
are wiser as well.
such and such can't do
Hmm.
technology.
Yeah.
I'm too old to learn X, and we say it to ourselves as well. I'm too old to learn
Mm,
X. Um,
hmm.
and I think sometimes that can lead to bias.
For sure. I definitely feel it. The older I get, I'm now 50, I turned 50 this year. I can definitely feel, even in the comments that some people make, even as a teacher, you know, there's this feeling we would prefer kind of, you know, a young whippersnapper native speaker who we can just suck the English out of, you know, by some kind of weird process of osmosis, rather than, you know, somebody who's been teaching English for 30 years, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and it is a bit disconcerting, you know. And I suppose all older people feel it, and it is a bit. It's even doubly disconcerting when I look back on my life and look at all the things that I've achieved. And I don't know whether which don't seem to be recognised at all. And I wonder whether you've had a similar kind of experience getting older, or it's just like
Um,
water off a duck's back.
I think I more do it to myself.
Okay.
Um, I spent a lot of my life thinking no one would take me seriously because I was too young.
Mm. Yes, I had
And
that
then
too. Yeah.
and then one day I started thinking that no one would take me seriously because I was too old. I don't
Yeah.
remember the stage where I thought that I was just right to be taken seriously.
Yes. There's that window, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's terrible that it
I think
is
it
a
was a
window, isn't
Tuesday.
it?
If memory serves, it was a Tuesday afternoon when I thought I'm just right. People are taking me so
And how
seriously.
old were you? Was
I know.
it?
No, I can't remember what the transition was. And I mean, interesting. I still sometimes think that, you know,
Yeah.
you forget that you're old. So, so I do
Yes.
sometimes think, well, no one's going to take me seriously because I'm too young.
That's what Lorena was saying in the live last Saturday, that, you know, there are people, they reach 60 and they're still full of energy and want to do lots of things, and, you know, set up businesses and stuff. And you know, but we were talking about we were framing it, I suppose, in the financial and economic of how to do that, and also the attitudes that you need, because life goes on, and it is a special experience being in your 60s, and we're talking. But the point was that, you know, it's not that. Uh, uh, you know, I suppose this morning everything hurts. My ankle hurts, for example. There is that about getting older, but in general, you know, there's I think, you know, people who are older than I am, you know, talk about, they say that, you know, that they don't feel
Mm,
old at all, you know,
right.
but
Interesting. I
people
mean, as I
feel
was
as old.
saying that, it reminded
Mm-hmm.
me that a lot of the people I work with, um, it's mainly the young people that seem to be conscious of their age.
Mm.
So I hear far
Okay.
more often. In fact, I'm not sure I've ever heard someone talking about some, like a middle-aged person being aware of their age or mentioning it, but younger people will say, it's difficult for me to ask someone who's 10 years older than me to do X.
Yes.
I don't feel comfortable in that environment because I'm the young guy that's.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that even though we're in a society that values youth, young people are telling me that they are conscious of their age and that it's holding them back from doing some things.
As a coach, in your work as a coach,
so younger leaders who are saying, I'm not sure that people are going to. I don't know if they're using my words of take me seriously, but they're feeling awkward in certain situations because they think they're perceived as being too young to be. I suppose it's a form of imposter syndrome, isn't it?
Yes, that we all have. Yeah, I think. But you see, it's more
one of the things that our imposter syndrome in a voice is saying, "Oh, no, you're too young."
Yeah, so it's like the marketing promotes youth, but then when it comes down to the nuts and bolts, maybe of doing jobs, we generally tend to find older people in those positions of management and leadership. It is. I remember when I was working in the British Council. I can't remember whether I think you were about to be my boss, and I was on that Man Dev program. A management development 1, I think it was. And I asked I was, stupidly ambitious, I think. I asked the trainer, how long do you think it might be before I'm a director? Strange. You remember the way I was. Probably still am a little bit. And she said, "Oh, well, maybe about 5 years." She said, "I was 32 or something." I was thinking, what on earth? 37 years old, this is ridiculous, and but of course it makes complete sense in the context, and I'm just wondering, do we need that age? That's my segue onto the third question. Is it a mistake to not have 18-year-old CEOs in in international organizations such as the British Council? That would be amazing, wouldn't it? If in Spring Gardens, does Spring Gardens still exist?
No.
If in Spring Gardens no, it doesn't. They are somewhere else. They're in Manchester or something.
No, they're in Stratford.
Oh, that's a nice place to be. Yeah.
Not on Avon, East End, Stratford.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, that's an interesting place to be.
It's an up and coming place.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Imagine if there was an 18-year-old CEO there in place in Stratford. What kind of organization would the British Council be? I wonder.
Well, again, I think and it probably does come down to your point that I poo-pooed originally of the appointed, or I don't think they would appoint one because it's partly the figurehead role that the CEO of the British Council has to represent the organisation in parliamentary committees and things like that. So they tend to choose people who have that experience, who have a wealth of experience in senior management. And it's unusual, how would you have got that at 18?
Well, yes, that's the thing, isn't
you're
it?
not going to have run a multi-billion.
You don't have the contacts, probably.
Yeah. But I mean, talking about MPs, so you need this gravitas to go and talk to parliamentary committees. There are some fantastic young politicians.
That's interesting.
Who do bring honesty and a connectedness, a devil may care attitude that maybe older colleagues often lack.
Yeah, we would be more cautious, maybe. What was the name of that? The youngest prime minister ever in English history? I've forgotten. Do you know the guy I'm referring? William Pitt. That's right. How old was he? He was
I don't
pretty
know.
young, wasn't he?
He did succeed his dad, so it's kind of, I think nepotism helps with
There you go. Appointment
youth.
once again. Yeah. He's kind of appointed. Oh, yeah, that's yes, that's an interesting. Yeah, kind of yes. Anyway, I'm not going to go there. So yeah, so it does seem that it, and then the other interesting thing is you were saying this gravitas. Do you need to be a man to do that, to represent the British Council in parliamentary committees? Do you think this is dangerous territory, isn't it? Should we
I
be
think
more diplomatic?
no. I think we have to address these things.
Yeah.
I don't think the British Council has ever had a Director General. About 3 or 4 Director Generals ago, the Director General decided he was going to call himself a CEO. But I don't think they've ever, to my knowledge, they've never had a woman in that role.
There you go. You see, why is that, I wonder?
They have had chairs. Female chairs they have had.
Not objects.
Kennedy,
women.
Who's a wonderful force of nature, who's a famous Scottish barrister, human rights lawyer. She was chair of the British Council for a long time and achieved great things. Sadly, I think statistically there are few women CEOs. There are few non-white CEOs.
Yeah.
So it's, and I suppose again because of that figurehead and appointedness, that split between, do we have the best person for the job, or do we have someone that's going to be the best figurehead for the job,
that looks, that looks the part,
that
let's say,
the part that is going to instill confidence in the investors, that opens you up to lots and lots and lots of bias.
Lots of bias, lots of money. It's just amazing, isn't it? How superficial we human beings can be. But so I think older leaders make better leaders? I think what we're saying is that it depends, because there's lots of different
leaders. Good leaders who continue to get better make better leaders.
Good leaders, yes, exactly. But a younger leader could be a very good leader.
Yes. Yeah, I mean,
but they would
an excellent 25-year-old leader is probably going to be an even better leader when she's 60.
Yes.
If she concentrates on development.
If she keeps an open mind, yes, exactly. Joan of Arc, I'm not sure. Did she get to be old? Or did Joan of Arc get to be old? We need to, that's something to ask.
No, I think because the British government has always prided itself on diversity and human rights, so they burnt her.
But Joan of Arc, the British government burnt Joan of Arc.
Yeah.
I thought it was. Anyway, I need to go to ChatGPT. I don't know the history on that one. I didn't know the English were involved.
She was burnt at the stake for.
Yes, I think I knew that, but I didn't know.
Yes, no, it was the British. She was fighting. She was trying to get the British out of France.
Yes, proper order as well. Yes, thank God that was
done.
I
mean, whereas we have the divine right to conquer wherever we feel like.
Yes,
we had a flag after all.
Yes,
Eddie Izzard fans. Yes, so it was the British that.
Yeah, so we never got to see her turn into a fine wine, as it were.
I think she may have. She may have not been well though. I mean, I think she heard voices and that.
That's right. Yes. So useful for a time for France, but then probably good that story ended early as.
Yes. We may never have heard of her if she hadn't been martyred. Something else I realized recently, because I was talking about politicians and gerontocracies, and you think of the Soviet Union.
What's a gerontocracy? Because I'm reading all sorts of words.
Is a regime led by incredibly old people.
Okay, examples. Well, these were
You think
cultures
of the
like
Soviet
Mexico,
Union,
for
so
example,
the
are always
Politburo, they were
considered.
all ancient, and
Hmm.
they would appoint a leader who would probably last for about 6 months and then drop dead. During the 70s and 80s, they had this progression of what seemed to be very old leaders who didn't last long because they had failing health, and some of them, they didn't admit that they were dead. Well, I think the other people didn't admit that the leader was dead for a while.
Yeah.
But I then discovered they actually weren't that old.
Why would that happen?
I used to think
Why
of
would you
them
do
as
that?
being absolutely ancient, but
Yeah,
they were in their late 60s and early 70s, which
not old at all.
compared to
Mm.
the Bushes and Trumps and
Mhm.
Pelosi's and McConnell's
Mm.
is decades younger. And
Yes,
so
and
you think of the Soviet Union as a gerontocracy, but I'm living in a country where large swathes of the leaders were born in the 1940s.
yeah, and they know what to do as well. I mean, there must
Well,
be
some of
some kind of
them,
competence that goes with
some
that,
of them know what to do. Some of them
Don't, yes.
don't know what day it is.
And it's quite, I mean, I suppose what we're discussing is quite relevant, isn't it, in light of Joe Biden and why and how he was removed, and Trump is still there. He must be the same age as Joe, maybe a couple of years
He's
younger.
a couple of years younger.
Yeah, so I mean, nobody really bats an eyelid at that, you know, and uh, you just don't get. I think there's a law, isn't there, in the United States that you have to be more than 30, don't you, to be president
You
of the
have to be
United
over
States?
35 to be president.
Yeah, why would that be?
The founding parents thought that was a good idea. Oh, fathers, sorry, they were all men, weren't they?
I wonder why there's no. Well, there must be some research on that. We'll ask
Gravitas, I
ChatGPT a
suppose.
bit later. I'll be lazy and I'll ask ChatGPT later.
You can ask
I
ChatGPT.
should know that.
I'm not big on asking ChatGPT for facts. I tend to go to Wikipedia for facts
Oh,
because
interesting.
ChatGPT is known to dream.
Yes, that's true. Though you can see when it's streaming. I normally ask it. I say, "Are you
It once told me
sure?"
it was on O'Connell Street.
Sorry,
It
O'Connell
once
Street. Did
told
you say?
me it was on O'Connell Street. I was practicing my Irish with it,
Yeah.
and I asked it the weather, and it said it's raining here in Dublin, and I said, "You're in Dublin?" Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day, I said, "Yesterday you told me you're in Dublin." No, I don't have a physical location. I am housed across
Oh,
servers in many places. Are any of them in Dublin? No. That's not
the
okay.
ghost in the
Listen, so you
machine.
definitely
Some of
claimed.
them must be in Ireland.
Don't know, but
Uh,
definitely it claimed they weren't. And I bet he
right.
might have been dreaming that it wasn't in Ireland the next day. Who knows?
Exactly. That's a good point. I might ask Wikipedia then.
I think Wikipedia would be a good source of that.
Yeah. Why the 35-year rule? The 35-year, and in the UK there isn't that rule, right?
No,
Funny
I
feeling
don't
in Ireland there is. I think in Ireland you do need to be a certain age to be
yeah,
president. I think.
that's a bit of
Anyway, we can
research
investigate
to do.
all of that a bit later on.
Leave a comment down below if you live in a country where there's age limits on heads of state and politicians and leaders.
Exactly. Yes.
And should there be?
Exactly.
I mean, would it be a good idea for
Yeah.
all of these 80-year-olds to retire?
They do have experience, don't they?
They do have experience, but I think there is a curve
Yeah.
of physical and mental acuity.
Yes. Where does that, I suppose it depends, doesn't it? I
It
was going to ask
depends
you,
on
where does
the
that drop off?
person.
Depends on the age that you are. Yeah, it depends on the person rather, and maybe the life that you've led. Okay, so how can we bring all of this together? So we're saying, I suppose, that a younger leader could be a very good leader, even though they lack maybe They lack experience and knowledge. Do they need advisors? We're getting back to the idea of building a diverse team, a leadership team.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the marks of a good leader is that they surround themselves with brilliant people and have the knowledge, the acuity, the ability to get those people to be their optimum selves, and to then diffuse all of that knowledge into whatever decisions or strategies they're formulating.
Yeah, and the age of the leader there doesn't matter. I think,
No.
I suppose, is what you're saying. Yes, and a diversity of age and gender and all sorts of things would be the way to go. You know. So the key skill there that a leader needs, that is a must, is being able to build a team, isn't it? I think.
And enjoying it. I mean, some of the people I work with, you can see their faces light up when they describe the brilliant people that they work with.
It's amazing, yes.
And you know how much they enjoy having a conversation with bright, creative, imaginative, interesting people.
Yes, that happened yesterday. I was talking to a student, and he did that. Yes, he remembered an ex-team member who was. We were talking about ChatGPT and does it make you lazier or not? And he was like, "That is, why on earth would somebody say that it makes you lazier?" He asked me, that's such a strange thing to say. And and then he started remembering an ex-team member of his who was just so creative in the way that he I think he was even talking about the way he would have used ChatGPT, because it's been a while since they worked together, you know. And he talked about the skills of that person in the Isn't it amazing? Yes, and his face did light up. Yeah. So that is really the key leadership thing, isn't it? It doesn't matter what age you are. It is, says Dara, reducing everything down to one competency.
It's our topic for today, so you're all right.
Yeah, it's about building a team, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's about really appreciating that team and really
being
enjoying
able to create a vision and being able to share that vision and bring people on board, enabling people to be their best selves.
And the vision may come from a team, right? In a way, or I mean, it's certainly the final version of the vision. Yeah, exactly. So we tend to think of the leader on their own with their vision, and then they kind of like pull people in, but it's not necessarily that way. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Microsoft, I think, would be an example of that, wouldn't it? Where it was two guys in a garage, you know, or three guys in a garage or something. Okay, interesting. Now, just to wrap it all up, then the language related to that, because you know the way I am, I'm always thinking about how, what do we say when we're doing all of this? What's the kind of language that we need to use, or we need to be careful of? You mentioned some of it, I think, at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't use any of those generational labels.
Yes.
And and I think, to reiterate that point, you would never, hopefully, you would never say, "Oh, black people do this," or "That's such a that's such a typical female thing to say." So you should stop yourself, and you'd be pulled up for saying those things, quite rightly. So you shouldn't be saying, "Oh, that's such a millennial thing to say," or "Okay, boomer."
Think about your facts, before you state something, before you affirm something. Think about whether it's actually useful to affirm that thing, I suppose, is one of the things. Yeah.
And question if in popular culture these labels exist, and people will talk about them, people write articles about them, as you say. Sometimes in HR, people will talk about these things as if they're real.
Yes, there are infographics on LinkedIn.
you have to constantly kind of check. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Was I
Mm-hmm.
like that when I was that age? So is it not? It's not because they're it's not because of the decade they were born in. It's just that's the life stage they're at, and those are the experiences that they're having, and that's what's important to them.
Yes, that's right. So Generation Y has always been Generation Y. You know, boomers have always been boomers in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, they might have stared at comics or books
Yeah.
or stone tablets, but they
Yeah.
probably always stared at stuff.
Yes.
Those poor
Fascinating,
cave
Socrates.
those poor
Huh?
cave adolescents who didn't know, they probably stared at those pictures of bisons.
Yes, exactly. The pictures of bison or pictures of other things that
Stop
were then, you
staring
know,
at those
scrubbed off.
pictures of bison and clear the table.
Exactly. You know, stop drawing on the walls. That's making you lazy.
Yeah, it's making that. Yep. If you want to see a bison, go out and hunt one. Look at the real bison. We don't need pictures of bison on the walls.
Well, thank you very much, Dave.
My pleasure as always.
And we'll have you back, obviously, if you will, if you would, if you
With pleasure.
may. So I'm going to put your contact details as a leadership coach in the description to this live, obviously, so that if anybody is interested in working with you to develop. Now, tell what gets developed, just so we can plug your
I think
services a little.
the kinds of capacities that we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Learning to appreciate diverse people, learning to see things from different angles and different perspectives.
The elephant.
Growing your self-awareness,
Mm-hmm.
knowing what your strengths are and developing
Mm-hmm.
those, knowing which weaknesses you can develop and which ones really aren't part of your makeup. So you need to have strong people in your team who can complement your toolkit.
And in terms of, experience level, do you work with leaders of all ages and levels of experience, or do they tend to be very, very
only ones between the ages of 42 and 47. No, everyone.
so diverse, and some of them are very talented, in inverted commas
They're all very
already.
talented.
They're all very talented, of course, but what do I mean? Some of them are very successful, and others are not so successful, and they're looking for the secret to their success, or
Yeah, a
what
wide
kind of
range. A range of career stages, a range of goals.
Mm-hmm.
Some people want to be promoted. Some people want to start their own business.
Yeah.
Some people, and that's an interesting one. Some people are happy where they are.
Yeah.
Which is
And they
culturally
feel they should
people
be.
are told that they have to keep going up and up and up.
Yeah.
And actually, we can't all be the CEO, and we don't all want to be. And
No.
it's really, if you're fine and happy being a manager and want to continue, I think it's about development. So it's leadership development. So you can continue to develop as a leader without wanting to lead a bigger team or to have more responsibility.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean,
But
not so
you can
obvious, right? But
explore
I
where
say,
you're
of
at,
course.
learn new things, and continue to learn new things, and continue to enjoy your role, and continue to nurture and develop people, and promote them so that they're your boss. And that's fine.
Promote them so that they're your boss. That's an interesting idea. Yeah. And why do they look for you? Because they feel that there's something wrong with them, that they shouldn't be happy where they are.
No, I don't. It's not remedial. I think that's the difference between coaching and therapy. There's nothing wrong with these people. It's a partnership.
Sure.
Sometimes we need someone to talk to, and especially to see other perspectives.
Yeah.
And often in the workplace, they don't have someone they can talk to. They can talk to their boss about some things,
Yeah.
but it's difficult for us. We kind of present an image of ourselves. We present a better image of ourselves to our bosses. We don't want to say, actually, I'm really bad at X to a boss.
Of course, we're afraid of losing our jobs. Yeah.
Or losing the promotion opportunity if that's what we want.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes it's difficult for people to have that level of confidentiality within an organization.
Of course, yeah.
Whereas, you know, I come in, I don't know anyone else. I don't know people in their company. I don't know who they're talking about. I haven't got my own preconceived ideas about the situations they're in. So they can talk very frankly, very transparently, and in total confidentiality.
Brilliant. Very, very interesting. So I'll put your contact details in the description for this Leadership Live and any other relevant information. And I hope that we can have you back.
With pleasure. Great stuff.
Well, thank you very much. We had a shaky start. I apologize to everybody because of the storm last night where I live here in central Mexico. There was a shaky start. In fact, we started late, and then the electricity went and all sorts of things. But I think it worked out very, very well, and that was a very interesting conversation. Indeed. Thank you very much, Dave. Un abrazo. Have a marvelous weekend, everyone. Bye.
Bye.